The crystal halls of the Galactic Council sparkled with light from 12 different homeworlds, as representatives from across the galaxy gathered for their monthly meeting. Ambassador Veltar of the Etherian Empire stood at the center podium, with his flowing robes catching the multicolored illumination from above. His tall, graceful form moved with the fluid motion that made his species famous throughout known space, as he prepared to address the assembly about their newest concern. Fellow council members, Veltar began in his melodic voice that seemed to sing rather than speak. We have discovered another species that has achieved faster than light travel, and we must decide how to welcome them into our galactic community. The various aliens in the chamber turned their attention to him with interest because new species discoveries were always exciting events that brought fresh perspectives and trade opportunities to their peaceful alliance. Hive mind. Zex Thor clicked, his mandibles together in the rhythmic pattern that served as communication for his insectoid species, while his compound eyes reflected the chamber lights like tiny mirrors. What do our intelligence reports tell us about these newcomers? He asked through the translation device that converted his clicking into words the other species could understand. His question brought murmurs of agreement from the other representatives, who were eager to learn about this new species and their capabilities. Admiral Kesrak of the Saurian Republic shifted his massive reptilian bulk in his specially designed chair and spoke in his deep, gravelly voice that rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder. My military analysts have been studying their technology, and I must say we have little to worry about from these creatures. They call themselves humans. He activated the holographic display that showed primitive-looking spacecraft made of simple metal alloys and powered by what appeared to be basic nuclear fusion reactors. Look at these crude vessels, Kesrak continued while pointing his clawed finger at the rotating ship images. They still use projectile weapons instead of proper energy beams, and their ships lack even basic gravitational manipulation systems that every civilized species has mastered for thousands of years. The other representatives nodded in agreement as they examined the simple designs that looked more like flying metal boxes than the elegant curved ships that filled their own fleets. Veltar gestured for quiet and continued his presentation with growing confidence in his voice. Our xenobiologists have studied their biological makeup and found them to be surprisingly fragile creatures that require specific atmospheric conditions and seem prone to emotional outbursts that cloud their judgment. The crystal being known as Resonance of Truth chimed in harmonious tones to add that human psychological profiles showed troubling signs of aggressive tendencies that would need careful management. This is exactly why we must offer them protected status, declared Commerce Minister Yartek of the Trade Federation, while his blue-skinned hands gestured emphatically. These humans appear to be in the early stages of galactic civilization, and without our guidance they might harm themselves or others through their primitive ways. The other representatives murmured agreement, because they had seen what happened when violent species were left to develop without proper supervision. The holographic display shifted to show Earth itself, spinning slowly in space with its single moon and the various space stations and colonies that humans had established in their local system. They have barely managed to colonize their own solar system, observed Science Coordinator Limdahl of the Research Collective while studying the data with her large, multifaceted eyes. Their population centers show signs of recent conflicts, and their military installations suggest they still fight among themselves rather than working together for common goals. Veltar nodded solemnly and activated another display showing human communication intercepts that had been gathered by long-range sensors. Our linguists have decoded their languages and found disturbing references to something they call war, which appears to be organized violence between different groups of their own species. The chamber fell silent as the representatives tried to understand how any intelligent species could fight against itself instead of working together for mutual benefit. This confirms our decision, stated Elder Morwin of the Peaceful Assembly, while his ancient voice carried the wisdom of centuries. We must bring these humans under our protection before they destroy themselves or become a threat to galactic stability. The other representatives voiced their agreement because protecting younger species from their own destructive impulses was one of the Council's most important responsibilities. Admiral Kesrak brought up tactical assessments that showed human military capabilities were centuries behind even the smallest council member fleets. A single one of our patrol ships could disable their entire space force without breaking formation, he declared with the confidence that came from commanding the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields, and their ships move too slowly to pose any real threat to our operations. The discussion turned to the practical matters of how to approach these humans and welcome them properly into galactic society. We should send them an invitation to join us here on Centauri Prime, suggested diplomatic aide Silnara, while consulting her datapad. A simple ceremony where they can meet our representatives and learn about the benefits of council membership would be appropriate for a species of their development level. Veltar agreed and began composing the message that would be sent to human space. We will offer them junior membership status with full protection and guidance as they learn to take their place among civilized species, he announced while the translation systems prepared the message in human languages. They will be grateful for our assistance and wisdom as they begin to understand how much they have to learn from us. The message was crafted with the patronizing tone typically used for primitive species that needed careful handling. It offered humans the chance to send a small delegation to meet with council representatives and learn about the wonders of galactic civilization. The invitation made it clear that humans would be welcomed as junior partners who would benefit greatly from council protection and guidance in exchange for accepting their limited role in galactic affairs. As the session ended, the representatives dispersed to their quarters feeling satisfied that they had handled another potential problem with their usual wisdom and foresight. None of them suspected that their intelligence about human capabilities might be incomplete, or that their assumptions about human nature could be dangerously wrong. The stage was set for a meeting that would change everything the council thought. They knew about this new species that called themselves humans. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force exploration vessel, UES Horizon, as the alien message finished playing through the communication systems. The condescending tone of the galactic invitation made his jaw clench. While he read through the translation that offered humanity protection and guidance like they were children who needed babysitting, Morrison had fought in the brutal Earth-Mars conflicts where entire colonies had been reduced to rubble, and he did not appreciate being talked down to by aliens who had never seen real warfare. Captain Hayes is requesting immediate communication, sir, reported Communications Officer Linda Brooks from her station near the main display. Morrison nodded and activated the link to the UES Defender, which was patrolling the outer system boundary, where it monitored for potential threats to human space. Captain Lisa Hayes appeared on the screen with her dark hair pulled back in regulation style, and her expression showing the same irritation that Morrison felt about the alien message. "Jake, you read that garbage they sent us," Hayes said without bothering with formal greetings because they had served together long enough to skip the pleasantries. "They want us to show up hat in hand and accept junior status like we are some primitive species that just discovered fire." Her voice carried the edge that came from years of commanding warships in the dangerous frontier zones, where human colonies faced constant threats from raiders and hostile environments. Morrison transmitted the message to Earth Command along with his own assessment that the aliens seemed to view humans as harmless primitives who could be easily controlled. The response came back within hours through the quantum communication network that connected all human worlds and military installations across their expanding territory. President Marcus Cole himself wanted to speak with the senior military commanders about how to respond to this unexpected first contact situation. The emergency meeting convened in the secure conference room deep beneath Earth Defense Command headquarters in Geneva, where the most important military decisions were made. President Cole looked tired as he reviewed the alien message while Defense Secretary Amanda Price and Fleet Admiral Ryan Clark studied tactical assessments of what little they knew about galactic military capabilities. The room buzzed with tension as humanity's leaders faced their first major test since achieving faster-than-light travel. "This invitation sounds more like a summons," observed Dr. Helen Foster, who served as Earth's leading expert on xenobiology and alien cultures. She had spent years preparing for eventual contact with other species, and her analysis of the message structure revealed, telling details about how these aliens viewed humanity. "They assume we will be grateful for their protection and accept whatever role they assign to us in their galactic order. Admiral Clark stood and activated the tactical display that showed human fleet positions throughout colonized space. Our intelligence suggests these council species have superior technology in some areas, but their military thinking appears limited, he reported while highlighting key strategic points. Their ships are built for exploration and trade rather than combat, and their tactics seem focused on political pressure rather than actual fighting. Defense Secretary Price raised concerns about accepting any agreement that would limit human sovereignty or military independence. If we agree to this junior status, we might find ourselves unable to defend our colonies if these aliens prove to have hostile intentions, she warned while reviewing the legal implications of the proposed arrangement. We need to approach this meeting from a position of strength rather than weakness. President Cole listened to all the arguments before making his decision about how humanity would respond to the galactic invitation. We will attend their meeting, but we will do so on our own terms, he announced with the authority that had carried him through 2 terms as leader of the unified Earth government. I want them to understand from the beginning that humans are not a species that can be easily controlled or intimidated. The discussion turned to practical matters of which ship should represent humanity at this crucial first meeting with galactic civilization. Captain Danny Roberts of the UES Normandy suggested that sending a small diplomatic vessel as expected would reinforce alien assumptions about human weakness and technological limitations. We need to make an impression that will change how they think about us, he argued while reviewing available fleet assets. Admiral Clark considered the various options before making a recommendation that surprised everyone in the room. The UES Thunderstrike finished its trials last month and represents the most advanced warship in human space, he said, while calling up the specifications for the massive dreadnought. If we want to send a message about human capabilities, this ship would certainly get their attention. The Thunderstrike had been built in the orbital shipyards around Luna, using lessons learned from the devastating Alpha Centauri incident, where human colonies had been attacked by unknown raiders. The ship incorporated every advance in human military technology, including weapon systems that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible by current scientific understanding. Its construction had been classified at the highest levels because revealing its capabilities too early might provoke hostile reactions from potential enemies. Captain Beth Warner received the assignment to command the diplomatic mission despite her protests that the Thunderstrike was designed for combat operations rather than peaceful negotiations. Warner had earned her reputation during the brutal Titan campaign, where her tactical brilliance had saved thousands of civilian lives from terrorist attacks. Her crew included some of the best officers in the fleet, including tactical specialist Lieutenant Nick Palmer and communications expert Lieutenant Casey Miller. The preparation for departure involved careful planning to ensure the mission would send the right message without appearing openly threatening. The ship's weapons would remain powered down during the approach, but their presence would be unmistakable to any observer who understood military technology. Warner studied everything known about the aliens while her crew prepared for what might be the most important diplomatic mission in human history. As the Thunderstrike undocked from Luna Station and began its journey toward the Centauri system, the crew understood they were carrying the hopes and fears of all humanity with them. The massive warship moved through space with deadly grace, while its advanced sensors swept the surrounding area for potential threats. Behind them, Earth continued its preparations for whatever consequences might follow from this first meeting. With galactic civilization, the die had been cast and humanity was about to show the galaxy exactly what kind of species they were dealing with in ways that would shatter every assumption the Council had made about these newcomers from a small, blue world. Traffic controller. Yimtal sat at his monitoring station in the orbital control center above Centauri Prime, watching the peaceful flow of merchant vessels and diplomatic ships moving through the system. His gray skin reflected the soft blue glow from the sensor displays while his large black eyes tracked the various contacts that appeared on his screens throughout the day. The Centauri system served as the neutral meeting ground for all Council business, and Yimtal took pride in maintaining the perfect safety record that had made this location famous throughout galactic space. The first indication of something unusual came when his long-range sensors detected an approaching vessel at the edge of the system moving faster than most commercial traffic. Yimtal frowned as he studied the energy readings because they showed power levels far beyond what his databases indicated human technology could produce. He ran the scan 3 times thinking his equipment might be malfunctioning, but the results remained consistent and deeply troubling. "Supervisor Naltek, please come to Station 7 immediately," Yimtal called across the control room, while his voice carried the nervous tension that came from discovering something that did not match expected parameters. His supervisor glided over on her anti-gravity platform and looked at the sensor readings with growing alarm as she realized the implications of what they were seeing from this approaching human vessel. The UES Thunderstrike dropped out of hyperspace at the system boundary with a brilliant flash of exotic radiation that lit up every sensor array within 50 light minutes of its arrival point. The massive warship emerged from the swirling energy vortex like some ancient predator awakening from sleep, while its 2-kilometer length dwarfed every other vessel in the vicinity. Its angular hull plates reflected the light from Zentauri's twin stars, while weapon ports along its sides gaped like hungry mouths waiting to be fed. Supervisor Naltek stared at the tactical display in shock as her computer systems struggled to catalog the approaching vessel and classify its various components. The ship's design spoke of a species that understood warfare at levels the Council had never encountered, because every line and surface seemed optimized for combat effectiveness rather than the aesthetic beauty that marked civilized starship construction. Point defense lasers tracked across its hull in search patterns, while massive turrets rotated with mechanical precision that suggested advanced targeting systems. "Alert the Council immediately," Naltek ordered while her hands trembled as she reached for the emergency communication controls. "Tell them the human delegation has arrived, but their ship is not what we expected." The traffic controller activated the priority channel that connected directly to the council chambers, where the representatives were waiting to greet what they assumed would be a small primitive vessel carrying a handful of nervous human diplomats. In the crystal halls of the Galactic Council, Ambassador Veltar was reviewing his welcoming speech when the urgent message arrived from orbital control. His melodic voice faltered as he read the energy signatures and weapon classifications that accompanied the alert about the approaching human vessel. The elegant Etherian dropped his prepared notes, while his flowing robes rustled with the sudden movement as he realized their intelligence about human capabilities had been completely wrong. "This cannot be accurate," Admiral Kesserak growled as he studied the tactical data on his personal display. The reptilian military commander had built his reputation on understanding alien military technology, but the approaching human warship defied every assumption he had made about this primitive species. Its weapon systems included kinetic cannons that could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed, along with nuclear missiles that clustered in launch bays like sleeping serpents waiting to strike. Hive mind Zexthor's clicking became frantic as the Klaxon collective processed the incoming data through their shared consciousness. The insectoid representatives had never encountered a species that built ships designed purely for destruction rather than the multi-purpose vessels that dominated galactic space. Every sensor reading confirmed that this human warship had been created by beings who understood violence at levels that terrified the peaceful council members. The most disturbing discovery came when the deep scans revealed the ship's power source, generated readings consistent with controlled antimatter annihilation. This technology was considered theoretical by most council species because the energy levels involved were considered too dangerous for practical application. Yet the humans had somehow mastered antimatter containment and were using it to power a ship that could probably destroy entire fleets without breaking formation. Captain Warner opened communications from the Thunderstrike's bridge while her calm, professional voice carried across space to the stunned orbital controllers. "This is Captain Beth Warner of the United Earth ship Thunderstrike, requesting permission to dock at the diplomatic station for our scheduled meeting with the Galactic Council," she announced while her ship's massive bulk cast shadows across the nearby commercial vessels. The contrast between her polite words and her ship's overwhelming military presence sent shockwaves through every alien who witnessed the arrival. The council chamber erupted in panicked discussions as representatives tried to understand how their intelligence could have been so completely wrong about human military capabilities. Crystal being resonance of truth chimed discordant notes that reflected the fear spreading through the assembly, while Commerce Minister Yartek's blue skin had turned pale as he contemplated the economic implications of dealing with a species that possessed such advanced military technology. "Look at the fighter escort," whispered Science Coordinator Limdahl as her multifaceted eyes tracked the small craft that accompanied the massive warship. The F-47 Phantoms were sleek predatory vessels that moved with the fluid grace of living creatures, while their pilots demonstrated reflexes and spatial awareness that exceeded anything in Council databases. These fighters were clearly designed for biological operators, rather than the automated systems used by most galactic militaries. Elder Morwin of the Peaceful Assembly sat in stunned silence as he watched the human warship approach the diplomatic station like some ancient god of war visiting mortals. His centuries of experience in galactic diplomacy had never prepared him for encountering a species that could build vessels of such terrifying capability while maintaining the politeness to request proper docking permissions. The humans were not the primitive species that needed protection, but rather something far more dangerous than anything the Council had encountered in their peaceful expansion across the galaxy. The realization struck every Council member simultaneously that they were no longer dealing with junior partners who needed guidance, but with potential equals who possessed military technology that could reshape the balance of power throughout known space. The carefully planned welcoming ceremony would need to be completely reconsidered now that they understood exactly what kind of species they were about to meet face to face. The docking bay of the diplomatic station had never accommodated a vessel as massive as the Thunderstrike, and emergency modifications were hastily implemented to handle the human warship's enormous bulk. Captain Warner watched through the bridge, viewports as mechanical arms extended to secure her ship, while alien technicians scurried around the docking collar like insects trying to comprehend something far beyond their understanding. The station's artificial gravity fluctuated under the strain of supporting the warship's mass distribution as its advanced systems interfaced with the primitive alien technology. Sergeant Alex Cooper led the honor guard detail as they prepared to accompany Captain Warner to the formal meeting with the Galactic Council representatives. His powered armor hummed with barely contained energy, while the advanced exoskeleton enhanced his natural strength and reflexes to superhuman levels. The other Marines in his unit checked their ceremonial weapons, which were fully functional despite their ornamental appearance, because human military doctrine never relied on purely decorative items when lives might be at stake. The alien security forces that gathered to witness the human arrival looked like children playing dress-up compared to the armored Marines who emerged from the Thunderstrike's airlocks. Station Commander Kilron watched in growing horror as the humans moved with mechanical precision that spoke of extensive combat training, while their equipment incorporated technology that made his own forces look primitive by comparison. Each human soldier carried weapons that could probably disable his entire security detail without effort. Captain Warner strode through the station corridors with the confident bearing of someone who had commanded starships through actual combat operations rather than the peaceful exploration missions that dominated galactic military experience. Her dress uniform displayed ribbons and decorations that marked her as a veteran of conflicts the aliens could barely comprehend, while her calm demeanor suggested she viewed this diplomatic meeting as just another mission to be completed efficiently. Dr. Lucy Green walked beside the captain, carrying datapads containing human historical records and cultural information that would be shared with the Council during their formal presentations. The xenobiologist had spent months preparing materials that would help the aliens understand human society, but she wondered if they were psychologically capable of processing the reality of a species that had evolved through constant warfare and competition, rather than the cooperative development that marked other galactic civilizations. The Council chamber had been hastily reconfigured to accommodate human atmospheric requirements, while translation systems worked frantically to process the complex linguistic patterns that marked human communication. Ambassador Veltar stood at the center podium trying to maintain his composure, while his flowing robes concealed the nervous trembling that had seized his elegant form since learning about human military capabilities. The other representatives clustered around their seats like prey animals sensing the approach of a predator. "Welcome to Centauri Prime," Veltar began, with his melodic voice carrying forced cheerfulness as he addressed the human delegation. We are honored to meet with representatives of your species and look forward to discussing how we might work together for mutual benefit. His prepared speech about protecting junior species had been completely abandoned in favor of more diplomatic language that acknowledged the humans as potential equals rather than primitives needing guidance. Captain Warner stepped forward and delivered a formal response that thanked the Council for their invitation, while making it clear that humanity approached this meeting as sovereign equals seeking partnership rather than protection. Her words were polite but carried an undertone of steel that suggested humans would not accept any arrangement that limited their independence or territorial sovereignty. The contrast between her diplomatic courtesy and the overwhelming military presence she represented created an atmosphere of tension that filled the chamber. Dr. Green activated her presentation systems and began sharing human historical records with the assembled aliens, while her matter-of-fact tone treated humanity's violent past as normal background information. She described the development of nuclear weapons during World War II as casually as discussing weather patterns, while explaining how biological warfare had been used during the Mars colonial uprising, without any apparent emotional distress about the massive casualties involved. The alien representatives listened in growing horror as Dr. Green recounted human conflicts that had claimed millions of lives and devastated entire worlds during the expansion into space. Her clinical description of the Alpha Centauri incident, where human colonies had been attacked by unknown raiders, revealed a species that responded to threats with overwhelming violence, rather than the diplomatic negotiations preferred by galactic civilization. The humans had traced the attackers to their base system and sterilized 3 planets in retaliation. Your species engages in organized violence against itself, observed Crystal, being resonance of truth with discordant chimes that reflected the aliens' psychological distress. How can any intelligent species survive such destructive behaviors without destroying their own civilization? The question revealed the fundamental gap between human and alien thinking about conflict resolution and the role of force in maintaining social order. Lieutenant Nick Palmer quietly studied the station's defensive systems during the cultural presentations and noted 17 separate vulnerabilities that could be exploited by hostile forces. His casual observation that the alien shields had gaps large enough to fly fighters through was offered as friendly technical advice, but sent ripples of alarm through the Council security staff. The humans were not trying to threaten anyone, but simply viewed everything through tactical analysis that assumed potential combat scenarios. Admiral Kesserak found himself in the disturbing position of realizing his own flagship would be helpless against the human warship that waited at the docking bay. The reptilian commander had built his reputation on understanding military technology, but the Thunderstrike incorporated weapon systems and defensive measures that exceeded anything in galactic databases. His carefully planned fleet formations would be torn apart by human tactics that treated space combat as a 3-dimensional chess game, played at relativistic speeds. The most unsettling discovery came when the aliens realized that humans did not just build weapons, but lived with them as constant companions throughout their society. Every aspect of human technology had been shaped by warfare, from their computers that evolved from targeting systems to their spacecraft that grew from weapons delivery platforms. Even their entertainment frequently revolved around conflict and combat scenarios that other species would find psychologically traumatic. Hive mind. Zexthor's collective consciousness struggled to process the implications of dealing with a species that planned for violence even when expecting cooperation. The humans approached every situation by first identifying potential threats and developing contingency plans for combat operations that might never be needed. This fundamental difference in thinking patterns suggested that peaceful coexistence might require careful management to prevent misunderstandings that could escalate into actual conflicts. Captain Warner stepped forward as the cultural presentations concluded and activated her own holographic display, showing Earth's position in galactic space, along with the expanding network of human colonies that stretched across dozens of star systems. Her confident posture and calm demeanor created a stark contrast with the nervous tension that filled the council chamber as the alien representatives struggled to process everything they had learned about this dangerous new species that had suddenly appeared in their peaceful galaxy. The United Earth government appreciates your invitation to join the galactic community, Warner began, while her words carried the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected the lives of millions. However, we must respectfully decline your offer of protected status because humanity prefers to stand as equals among the stars, rather than accept limitations on our sovereignty or territorial expansion. Her polite rejection of the Council's protection sent shockwaves through the assembled aliens who had never encountered a species that refused their guidance. Elder Morwin of the peaceful assembly leaned forward in his chair while his ancient voice trembled with the weight of centuries spent managing galactic diplomacy. Captain Warner, your species possesses military capabilities that far exceed anything in our databases, and your historical records suggest a concerning pattern of violent conflict resolution, he observed while choosing his words carefully. How can we ensure that human expansion will not threaten the peace we have worked so hard to maintain throughout known space? Warner smiled with the confidence that came from representing a species that had earned its place through strength rather than diplomatic maneuvering. Humanity has learned that true peace can only exist when potential aggressors understand the consequences of threatening those under our protection, she explained, while her calm tone made the implicit threat sound like a reasonable business proposal. We would be honored to serve as peacekeepers for the galactic community and ensure that no hostile forces disturb the stability you have created. The irony was not lost on Ambassador Veltar that the species they had intended to protect was now offering to protect them instead. His melodic voice carried a note of desperate hope as he asked whether humans would truly use their terrifying military capabilities to defend other species rather than conquer them. The question revealed how completely the Council's understanding of humanity had been overturned by this first meeting with their representatives. Dr. Green activated her medical scanners and began treating injured station personnel who had been hurt during the hasty modifications to accommodate the Thunderstrike's massive bulk. Her gentle care and advanced medical technology demonstrated that humans possessed the same capacity for healing that they showed for destruction, while her professional competence impressed the alien medical staff who observed her techniques. The contrast between human military power and humanitarian compassion created a complex picture that challenged every assumption the Council had made. Engineering specialist Tony Wright worked alongside alien technicians to repair damaged systems throughout the station, while sharing insights that advanced their understanding of their own technology by decades. His casual explanations of human engineering principles revealed a species that approached problem-solving through practical application, rather than theoretical study. The aliens began to realize that human technological development had been driven by necessity rather than curiosity, which explained why their military systems were so far advanced. Lieutenant Palmer completed his security assessment of the station and provided a detailed report to Station Commander Kilran that highlighted vulnerabilities in their defensive systems, along with practical recommendations for improvements. His friendly advice about upgrading shield generators and repositioning weapon emplacements was offered, without any expectation of payment, because humans understood that strong defenses benefited everyone in the long run. The aliens found themselves grateful for guidance from the same species they had planned to lecture about galactic civilization. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Karen Bell established emergency medical protocols with the station's health services, while her advanced trauma treatment systems saved lives that would have been lost using alien medical technology. Her matter-of-fact discussion of battlefield medicine and combat injuries gave the aliens disturbing insights into the reality of human military operations, while her obvious dedication to preserving life demonstrated that warriors could also be healers when circumstances required both skills. The Council voted in emergency session to offer humanity full membership status as an equal partner in galactic affairs, rather than the junior position they had originally planned. The recognition came with an unprecedented request that humans consider taking responsibility for galactic security operations, because no other species possessed the military capabilities or psychological makeup necessary for effective peacekeeping in a galaxy that might face external threats. Commerce Minister Yartek presented trade agreements that offered humans access to galactic markets in exchange for security services that would protect merchant vessels and trading posts throughout Council space. His blue-skinned hands shook slightly as he realized that economic prosperity depended on military protection, that only humans seemed capable of providing at the levels required for truly effective deterrence against potential hostile forces. Captain, Warner accepted the Council's offer on behalf of humanity, while making it clear that human peacekeeping operations would be conducted according to human military doctrine, rather than the limited enforcement actions preferred by galactic civilization. Her explanation that effective deterrence required overwhelming force projection, rather than diplomatic warnings, sent chills through the alien representatives who were beginning to understand exactly what they were unleashing. Admiral Kesrak watched from his flagship's observation deck as the Thunderstrike prepared to depart Centauri Prime, with new orders from Earth Command that designated human forces as the primary security providers for 3 major trade routes. The massive warship moved through space with lethal grace while its weapons remained powered down, but ready for instant activation. For the first time in his long military career, the reptilian admiral felt truly safe, because potential threats would think twice before challenging forces backed by human military power. The final transmission from Captain Warner announced that additional human warships were already en route to strategic positions throughout Council space, where they would establish patrol bases and rapid response capabilities. The galaxy would never be the same now that humanity had taken its place among the stars, not as the protected, but as the protectors who stood ready to fight, so that others could continue their peaceful existence without fear of those who might threaten the stability that generations had worked to create.